Hey everyone, Sean here, and welcome to this review for the TV series Knuckles. It's supposed to be a spin-off series from the Sonic the Hedgehog film, I guess trilogy, depending on what they're going to do with it at this point. But the film series is taking place within that same universe, of course, with Idris Elba returning as Knuckles once again, alongside some of the characters that you've seen from the movies, including, of course, Wade, who's supposed to be like the co-star of this series. It's a pretty short one. It's 30 minutes each, and there's 6 episodes overall. And I feel that this is going to be just a one-off thing, which I think is for the best. And that's kind of like my sort of sneak peek as to how I felt with the series overall. That being said, I think this series was pretty promising at first, and including the first 2 episodes, they were pretty promising. And okay, you forgive it for what it's trying to do. Setting up these characters with Knuckles trying to adjust to his new home, but at the same time, like his sort of beliefs or his personality and such like that. And the way the things that he knows, what he knows, and what he thinks is normal, conflicts with the earthly home style that Sonic and Tails have already sort of adjusted to, but Knuckles is having a harder time to do so. And of course that conflicts with Maddie, which is who is the adoptive mother at the moment for these three, which is kind of always been a little weird, just because you have these three animal characters, right, being adopted by a human character. But it is interesting, that being said. But funny though, the first episode was directed by Jeff Fowler himself, who has directed the 2 films, right? And they've been pretty good for what they have been, despite the shortcomings that the 2 films have had. But that being said, of course, they have that spirit overall, and that spirit definitely carries over to these episodes, or the first 2 episodes. So with that, it starts off pretty nice, with that first initial swing, but then it starts to get a little shaky by the 3rd episode, and even maybe the 4th, depending on who you are. But the 3rd episode, it's a very mixed bag, depending on what you like, and what you like to see in these shows, because the whole zaniness thing that you kind of see from the 2 episodes goes, I would say, bonkers, right? And of course, it involves with the dinner with a Jewish family, and they've been having trouble trying to keep together and such like that. And Wade, of course, has had daddy issues, let's just say. And so it obviously tries to set up Wade being this more of a sympathetic character. But Wade comes off as not endearing, even though they're trying to make him as endearing as possible. But I just couldn't resonate with him overall, and they focus on him quite a bit when this is supposed to be Knuckles, right? And I expected to see a lot of Knuckles, whereas here we see a lot of Wade, especially with his family stuff. So it really doesn't show too much of how Knuckles starts to understand and adjust to the earthly home life, so to say. And if they tried to do it here in the dinner scene, then they definitely did not do a good job. But but it was interesting in some aspects, because he learns about Jewish culture and traditions, and I actually was okay with it. But of course, the execution could have been far better. And I actually did like, out of all these characters, right, the mother, Wade's mom, the Jewish mom and stuff like that, of course. But I found her to be the most endearing out of all these human characters that were introduced here, in this series, and not so much Wade. Even the mother was bringing up uh, indirectly the Holocaust, right? With how the Jewish dealt with with what happened in history essentially, and what their people went through and all that stuff, in pretty much like in one sentence, and that I found pretty endearing because it establishes a common thing, a common ground with Knuckles' race, because he comes from the echidnas, and echidnas are for the most part are supposed to be extinct, and they went through, it depends on each universe. I mean, for the most part, they essentially brought themselves their own end. But in this universe, they were at war with, I believe, with these big owls or whatever. And the owls essentially wiped them out almost, with the exception of Knuckles, of course. And so it is some sort of common ground. Point being, and I actually liked, the mother, for the most part, of how she was presented here, especially in episode 3. Wanda, who is the I guess the older sister for Wade. I didn't even know she was the older sister because the way she acted was just absolutely childish. It is zany, like it's just um it's even out of this world almost, and then you have all these other characters who are pretty zany, but she takes the cake in the worst way possible. I think she was the most grating, I guess you could say cringy character. She just acts like she was written by these adults that think children find this sort of humor like cool or funny or something. I personally found it pretty grating, and I'm not sure if a lot of kids like this sort of character. I think you should probably just write characters that feel more natural. They feel well sort of weaved into the world. But it's just like it's so funny because there's so many of these human characters being so over the top and zany and just like have this weird quirk about them, each of them especially, you know. And it almost makes Knuckles like the most normal character out of all of them, even though no, of course Knuckles isn't a kid now. He has the whole warrior thing going on. He seems to be the most normal out of all these characters, which is insane. That of itself is pretty zany, but that's just how it goes, and none of it really sticks overall. These characters, and I mean the humans for the most part, are just like they're trying to be reminiscent of like at least from my perspective, like like Police Academy, Naked Gun, and like very over the top. It's just they try to be zany in that endearing way, but it just doesn't quite stick with the Sonic name on there. And I know this is supposed to be some that sort of tone established ever since from this first movie, but it really does not stick well here. I think there always is some sort of line, especially if depending on your audience, right? And for the most part, the Sonic fans are probably around my age, right? Like 30, 30s and stuff like that. And yeah, maybe we're all idiots in heart, but I think we even have a line to draw across, and this is definitely not. This definitely crosses over way too far, especially once Wanda made an appearance with the whole FBI thing and just like, oh yeah, I'm so I'm all that because I'm in the FBI. Oh, what are you? You're a small time. You're a cop, or a police officer for this small ass town. Whatever. Like that's almost like the exact tone, right, for the sister, and it's just like, oh gosh, you know. And there was a scene within the dinner scene where she just goes bonkers and just like even takes a fork and stabs into her brother. And I'm just like, what am I watching here, man? Like what like am I watching like a weird family comedy thing? Or, with Jewish people, or am I watching Knuckles? And oh, you know, here we are with Knuckles like reacting just to remind you, hey, you're watching a Knuckles freaking show. But it definitely felt like they're trying to like shoehorn this whole just zaniness to it, to think that, oh yeah, these human characters are just fine just because we got Knuckles and Sonic and Tails and stuff like that in this world. But there's gotta be a ground, a line, and really, um I don't know, make it work. And it just definitely did not feel it worked here. I understand that not all episodes were directed by Jeff Fowler, and that's kind of, I think that's a huge issue with these things, and there are different a couple of different writers at that too. I think it's so funny because the first two episodes and the last episode were actually really good, and those were all written by I have it right here, John Winnington. So um, probably credit for John Winnington for making these episodes probably the best, likely the best ones, whereas everyone else really didn't were not able to stick it all that well. Otherwise, that being said, the fourth episode I wanted to say was very uh, much of a mixed bag again, depending on who you are. But under that grading experience with the whole musical thing, um, it had some pretty interesting lore because it actually tells what Knuckles did, and even brought in a character or boss from Sonic '06, and it kind of explains how Knuckles kind of got his powers in a way, or how he got a power up after dealing with this said boss or demon or whatever you want to call it. And then, of course, by the fifth episode, that one definitely felt more like a dodgeball kind of thing. But of course, it doesn't stake all that well here either. It's like, it really, again, what the hell am I watching? Am I watching a dodgeball kind of thing, a Jewish family comedy, or am I watching Knuckles, right? And it really, all this other stuff is like filler for Wade. They're trying to establish Wade instead of trying to show that Knuckles is growing here in this world. And so half of the episodes were good, I guess you could say, and the other half is just all filler. It felt like it really does not show much that Knuckles has adjusted, right? I mean, again, they tried to do it in the third episode. Him trying to like take in the family dinners and everything, what they do, these humans anyway, and then with learning some Jewish culture, Jewish food and everything. Again, which I thought was nice, but the execution was just not there, of course. So that's kind of like a sort of a TLDR almost. It just doesn't quite stick it all that well. Um, they're trying to do this buddy cop thing, but again, the execution wasn't there. But you do feel that with the first two episodes, especially when by the time Wade and Knuckles were in the same car driving, and then they start to bang their heads and stuff like that with the radio and everything, with the music, right? And Knuckles learns about like CDs and radios and stuff like that, music and such. Um, but again, doesn't show a whole lot of Knuckles uh, trying to learn about these things. It's just like, okay, all right, here you go. He learned, it's that sort of thing. It kind of just felt shoehorned at this point. um, and then back to episode 5, with the dodgeball thing. He tries to, or Wade tries to deal with the bowling championship thing, which I even forgot to mention. Yeah, this is the other huge plot point is Wade trying to be a great bowler, right? Being one of the best, if not the best, um, at least in Reno, Nevada, right, or Las Vegas or whatever. But um, yeah, man, it's just the tone and just the overall ground was all over the place. We never got a lot of Knuckles. We just got a lot of Wade instead, or at least half and half, if not 60% Wade, 40% Knuckles. It felt like. It really felt like Knuckles was the fly on the wall, while Wade, you just watch Wade being this like goofball, including his sister, of course, who just are just completely just zany children um, in adult bodies essentially, and the mom has to deal with it, right? But there were some good moments. Forgot to say almost with the action. Of course, the action was pretty good, especially with Knuckles, of course. But then, they tried to kind of like make fun of like stunt doubling and stuff like that. The action sequences with some of the humans, especially with Wade and the mom, right? Right. The mom gets some action in, and there is a scene with the stunt double being obviously not her. It's hilarious. It kind of is reminiscent of like old kung fu movies, or like what was it? Even like Kung Pao. Was it Kung Pao? Um, Makes fun of that, and which that of itself is a very zany thing. The tone is kind of similar, but the difference is that you expect that in Kung Pao, whereas in Knuckles it's like you want to see Knuckles, sort of interact and stuff like that. But again, it's just like he's just kind of there, and Wade is doing his thing. But yeah, back on the action. And speaking of that, the main bad guy, of course, doesn't even get that much of a focus either. Of course, you kind of get a plot dump and this one part, and that's it. That you expect to care for this villain who apparently worked with Dr. Eggman or Robotnik or whatever. And then that's it. That's the only sort of connection that this character has in this world, or with this overall arcing story. That, okay, he worked with Dr. Eggman, that's it. And then he went rogue, I guess, at some point when Robotnik met Sonic or something. So, okay. And then he's just kind of just there for the first episode and the last, pretty much. And so I just felt very indifferent about this villain. I forget his name. Let me look to here. He's just called a buyer. Like, he doesn't even have a name. That's the thing, right? So that's pretty funny. And then not to mention, of course, the agents, the two rogue agents of Gun, um, you know, were also kind of just there. They had some more screen time, but other than that, I didn't care for them either too much. Um, they're also kind of like a little higher up in terms of like grading and kind of cringy and stuff like that. Maybe I forget the dude's name, but the black dude with the whole mom thing, like hey mom, I'm busy, that sort of gag. Um, it's just it seems like they're always trying to write these jokes out, thinking this is what kids like, right? This is what the kids of today really like. But it feels like um, a B graded version of like Police Academy and like Naked Gun and like all those other comedies in the 90s, and of course maybe the early 2000s, but lower. It's like the Wish.com version of that sort of humor, and subparly integrated into the Sonic films or Sonic media, and but I forgot to mention the only other character that I found kind of likable was Jack, who was like this like bounty hunter, I guess, who bowled with Wade, former best friend, I guess, at some point, or well, in the beginning, right? Because something happens, and yeah, it's that one's a little more forgivable, surprisingly, but yeah. pretty much Wanda and then the two agents were pretty much like the most unlikable characters, I would say. Of course, with Wanda taking the cake. The buyer was very indifferent. He was just kind of just there for the sake of being a villain. Um, Casted by I think it was a pretty good actor. I forget his name. Forgive me, but I'm actually familiar with his face. Let me try to look it up here. Rory McCann, so or McCann. Uh, I think his name is so. Or at least how you pronounce it. Excuse me. And yeah, so he wanted Knuckles' power or more of Knuckles' power, uh, because he already collected these like quills from Knuckles, so he made these like weapons out of them. Which I thought the action sequences for those parts were I get like I said were great, but everything else was just like kind of hit or miss, including the most of the humor. But with whenever Knuckles is on the screen, it's great. Like I like the whole Doritos thing, him trying to set up the warrior gladiator arena thing, that whole gag, him learning what being grounded means, and then and him not trying to deal with Maddie, don't make Maddie mad, kind of thing. Uh, those parts were actually very endearing in comparison to everything else. What I also wanted to mention here was Christopher Lloyd voicing Pacha Kamak, um, which is the chief, right, for Knuckles' tribe or clan. And I thought he was pretty funny too for the brief time he was in. But it was nice to hear Christopher Lloyd's voice, Doc Brown, as the chief. So there are some moments even within the filler, right, the bad filler to be had. But yeah, I think overall, they try to lure you in with Sonic and Tails being in the first episode, the second episode, and being with Knuckles and Wade. Of course, that's like the only actual episode where it kind of met my expectations. Like I thought you would see more of that, kind of where Sonic and I forget his name, was it James or something? I forget the main human character's name, who pretty much found Sonic, right? And um, I thought we are gonna see something like that, like a parallel almost. But again, we saw too much of Wade, so it should have been called the Knuckles and Wade show, or even Wade and Knuckles show. Yeah. So, and I also forgot to mention in the fifth episode, like I said, it felt like dodgeball, and on top of that, right, really help establish that point was ESPN the Ocho, which was another gag from uh, dodgeball, and they even had what was his name, Cotton and stuff like that, and what's that comedian's name or that actor's name? I forget. But anyway, great actor. Anywho, they tried to do that, and then surprisingly, Wade's dad is played by what was it? Let me try to look it up here. Carrie Ellis. Ellis played Robin Hood from the classic comedy film Robin Hood, of course, or was it Men in Tights? Um, Somewhere around there. So anyway, it's been a long time, but yeah, it's good to see him, you know, back in on the screen here with that accent and everything. But yeah, other than that, yeah, it's just like kind of whatever. The production value was there. The music too is just again like they really need to go into that library of Sonic music. Maybe they vaguely did something like that for the last episode, but that's about it. And it doesn't really like make it clear. And it might have felt vague, but otherwise it was just mostly like all those songs you've heard, like Blink 182 and like Offspring, I think, and so on and so forth. You know, more licensed songs, whereas they didn't really bother with once again bother with the Sonic soundtrack. Like, there's a vast library, and yet they've like just done little, very, very little to not, if not at all. So that's on top of that, of the whole disappointment side of things. Even with the mindset going into this whole streaming show or TV show, not expecting much from it, I think it definitely kind of dropped the ball there. The more I talk about it, but yeah, that's all I can say really. Um, it doesn't really show too much that about the process of what Knuckles was learning. It doesn't really do a good job like showing more of like Knuckles and Wade's relationship together, and and that was like the initial setup in those trailers, right? But yeah, um, there is some things to take away from, even with the bad parts of it. You know, again, I actually like the Jewish mother, bringing up the Jewish history and like presenting like the food and everything, the candles and all that stuff. And that's where, yeah, you can see Knuckles learning that stuff, but it's like there's so much of that filler. It kind of gets to get lost within that. And so, especially with trying to have Wade's sister like be very showy and stuff like that, have a lot of spotlight. But yeah, man, it was very unnecessary to put it lightly. So yeah, I think they really need to draw the line when it comes to the whole human thing. I think there needs to be some sort of the ground needs to be established, and you can't have everyone being zany, right? Besides um, Wade and stuff like that. Wade was okay. Like, I'm okay with Wade being the zany one, and then everyone else kind of like sort of rolling their eyes or dealing with Wade. Um, I don't know. I would guess it makes sense with his sister, but yeah, I mean, of course, even the mom is kind of tired of it, right? But um, yeah, the writing was just wasn't all there. The focus wasn't there, of a good focus. I mean, they focused on something, but they just did the wrong focus. Uh, yeah, you know, it is what it is. It's a spin-off series, and I expect that this is going to be the one time. But at least, yeah, I mean, at least performances were great with Idris Elba and all that stuff. And it was nice to see Sonic again, Tails again, um, in the between. So yeah, that's really all I got. There's nothing really else to talk about here that I haven't said already. So yeah, I think uh, with the score, five being in the middle or being average, I actually, despite a lot of the bad mouth I gave, I actually would give it a 6 out of 10. There is production value here for being a streaming series. Knuckles was great, of course, whenever he was on the screen. The fights were pretty good, I would say. It's just that everything else, the focus was just like Wade, It wasn't Wade and Knuckles, it was Wade, and then Knuckles was in the back, it felt like. But yeah, there's some endearing things like the Jewish thing. But yeah, it's just yeah, Wade with the whole bowling thing, finding his dad, and everything else. It shows Wade more than Knuckles, I felt. So, all right. 6 out of 10. If anyone wants to talk about their comments in the comment section below, I'd love to read them. What do you guys think of Knuckles? Did you enjoy the series? Did you not enjoy the series? Let me know. I'm all ears. And don't forget to hit the thumbs up, the subscribe button if you want to see more reviews from me. Really helps out, and I do appreciate it, guys. So this has been my review for Knuckles, the TV series, or spin-off series from the Sonic the Hedgehog film series. So yeah, thank you very much, and hope to see you all in next video. Sean out.